If you feel a little burnt out from the homeschooling grind, or you're thinking about starting up in the fall of 2025, this is going to be an episode that you want to check out. Today, we're going to have an interview with Grace. Grace is a homeschooling consultant with over 10 years of experience in special education. She has worked as a public school teacher in the public school system, specifically with children with autism. She's been in private reading tutor, and now she is founder of Homeschooling for All, an organization that is dedicated to make sure that homeschooling is accessible for all families, including support needs families. She has helped hundreds of families successfully homeschool their children with disabilities, and she is on a mission to making sure that homeschooling is possible for all.
I have experience as a public school teacher, as a tutor, kind of been a little bit of everything. These days, I am working primarily as a homeschool consultant. Now, primarily working with either families who are currently homeschooling their kids with disabilities and need support, or those who are thinking about it, but they have no idea how to take that plunge.
Hey, I'm Kimberly, founder of Supporting Autism Mama. Today, we're going to take a deeper dive into that topic we've been talking about all June: homeschooling our special needs children. Over here at Supporting Autism Mama, we do not gatekeep our wins as special needs parents, and that includes homeschooling, something that has significantly changed the lives of my children. It has helped us meet both academic goals and our lifestyle goals. If it's something that you have the ability to do and are even thinking about doing, I want to make sure I give you all the resources I can. So far in the month of June, we have talked about the 7 different things that I would do to get started homeschooling in the fall of 2025. We've talked about how to create our own IEP at home. We've dove into several ebooks and several resources that you can get down below. And today we're going to have an interview with a homeschooling consultant that works specifically with children with special needs.
So you said that you're a homeschooling consultant. What exactly, can you walk us through what exactly that is?
I really give families as much or as little support as they need, either as they're starting homeschooling or they're in it and they're just kind of facing some roadblocks. So a couple of things that I do is, first of all, on social media, I share a lot of free tips, advice, tricks, across subjects of homeschooling. So all the way from getting started to what curriculums to pick to how to actually teach in a way that works for kids' brains. Then I also do one-on-one coaching with families, and that can range pretty broadly from families who are hey, we have no idea what we're doing. We want you to help us through every bit of this. So I literally will, I will write their lesson plans for them every week. I will send them links for resources and curriculums, and we will either meet weekly or whatever works for the family, where I teach them how to do this. They go practice it, and then they come back to me with questions. I give them help and feedback. So it can look like that, or it can just look like I have one-on-one calls with parents all the time who are we think we have a good handle on this, but we're really struggling with our reading curriculum, or we're really struggling with behavior and regulation. And then I ask them all the questions, kind of get the picture, and then I come up with a plan to support them. So that's kind of on the consult coaching side. And then I also have an online class for parents that can kind of guide them through everything. Overall, just figuring out what families need, and just our kids' needs are so individualized, parents' needs and families' needs are so individualized. So parents are usually what services do you offer? I'm well, what do you need? And we'll figure it out.
If someone, let's say I decided I wanted to homeschool, and I contacted you. So what exactly would that one-on-one meeting look like?
Families who either have kids with IEPs in a public school or private school system, and they're really thinking about doing this, or their kid's younger and they've never been in school. What that would look like is I send families an intake form where I just ask a bunch of questions, kind of get that information from them on the forefront. So then when we're either calling over the phone or meeting virtually, face to face over the phone, that I know what you need. So that first meeting, we're getting right to it. It really depends too on what the parent is looking for. Sometimes parents want to show up with a list of questions and they ask and I answer and point them in the right direction. Or I have families who just show up and are just deer in the headlights, please help me. And I'm okay, here's what we're going to do first. Here's what we're going to do next. Along with the meetings, I also send documentation after the meeting. So I always tell the parent like, hey, you're welcome to like take notes or like write things down, but like I'm going to do all that for you because now is just the time for you to like listen. And I don't want you to worry about having to remember all this because it's a lot. And depending on what the family's looking for, we either meet like weekly or every other week or monthly, just depending on their needs at that time.
So one of the reasons that I wanted to meet with you after I found out about homeschooling consulting is because especially I feel like in all education, but especially for those that do have special needs children or support needs family, whatever wording you want to use, is I think that our education is so much more than academics, and that absolutely translates to homeschool. Like even when I keep records of my kiddos, like of course I keep like academic goals, but then there's also like life goals, ADLs, emotional regulation, like there's all the things. And so I love that we have another resource if we reach out to you. Can you share kind of your journey? You kind of briefly mentioned that you were in the public school system, but can you kind of share your journey and how you got here?
Sure. So kind of like all the way back to growing up, I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. When I did like some internships and kind of looked into it, I was like, oh, like general education is fun, but like I need a little spice. I need some excitement. So, learned about special education, really went all in on that. So I have my undergraduate degree in special education, and then I have my master's degree in literacy education and like autism studies. So kind of all of the things mashed up into one. From there, I worked in public schools for 7 years. First year teaching, I was in an inclusion setting. And then from there on out, I was primarily in a self-contained setting for kids with autism. And then later in my teaching career, ended up serving as like the lead teacher for our campus. So not only supporting my classroom, but supporting the other teachers. And got to a point where I got a little burnout, not with the kids, but just with the public school system. Yeah. So decided to take a leap and started tutoring primarily after that. Still was working with a lot of the same students, actually. Like when their parents found out that I was leaving, they're like, okay, you can still tutor us, right? And I was like, yeah, right, we're good. A little bit of tutoring. And then I figured out like, oh, like during the day, what families are available? It's homeschooling families. So that kind of like linked me up with those groups of families. And ever since then, that's just been my primary group of people that I work with. Really focus on those homeschooling families, especially those with disabilities. So that's kind of my journey going through that.
And do you have any history of homeschooling?
Actually, I was homeschooled for 2 years in elementary school. Even though I wasn't homeschooled for like my whole education, I have like those memories. Like we would literally like, we would read Little House on the Prairie, and then we'd like go on a hike and like sit in a field. And it was just like the sweetest little memories. And so I loved helping families figure out how to do that.
I think that a lot of, especially families that do have children with special needs, they like love the idea and almost the romance, which we'll get into that later, but almost the romance behind like homeschooling. But there's so much more that comes into play when you do want to homeschool your special needs children. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, it has done wonders for my kids. So I think that it's great, but there are other things that, just like everything, there's just other things that we have to take into consideration. So yeah, for sure. I love that you're a resource for us now. You mentioned you were in a self-contained classroom. Can you just kind of describe like what kind of kiddos you work with, or what, just so our viewers kind of know?
Sure. I primarily worked with grades 3, 4, and 5. In my state and in my district, kind of the way that they organize like classrooms and levels of support was by grade level, and then just by the needs of the kids. So all of my kids happened to have a diagnosis of autism. There were students in other programs who maybe didn't have that diagnosis, but just had the level of like support need that my classroom would fit. So it was just a very like structured environment with lots of visual support. So we used a lot of evidence-based practices and like teaching strategies that just fit. So it just a space that allowed for a lot of predictability, but we also had to have a lot of flexibility, which you know. And so I had up to 8 students in my classroom, taught in a couple different districts, but very similar settings. What we're working on, of course, academics, you know, we're always coming back to that, but primarily and first and foremost, regulation, behavior, the ability to be relaxed and calm enough in our bodies so that our brains can learn. And then, I taught children how to like have joint attention, how to understand what learning looks like, how to understand what a book is. So all the way from that to teaching like pre-algebra concepts. So it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's a good tool for our families to have too, because we hear these, especially if you have special needs children, you're in therapy, like you hear all these words all the time.
Yes,
and to be able to have someone like you where they can consult with and like really understand what joy and attention means.
Yes.
And then also like, I feel like I get a lot of questions like, okay, but my kid doesn't even sit at the table. I'm like,
yes,
Celia, I understand. And that's why, I mean, you know, I'm so big on regulate before you educate. And that's, I love that you also have experience in that. So you can help families figure out how to do that. So that's awesome. I just love everything that you do. So like there's benefits for all children with homeschooling, but specifically for our support needs family, our special needs children, what do you think are some great benefits that homeschooling can provide for them that maybe the public school system just kind of loses a little bit?
So I think the number one benefit for a lot of families that I support is just that flexibility piece, especially if they have a kiddo who's in public school, really struggling with behavior or regulation, and they just feel like it's a constant fight, like always getting calls from school, always in those meetings. Like that is exhausting, especially when you're like, I feel like I could do better at home, but I don't know how.
Right.
So I think that piece is like huge. I do a lot of like supporting and consulting with families, but I also homeschool for a couple local families in my area. And so sometimes like we'll show up and there's like, hey, like we didn't sleep well last night. We got our medicine a little late. We're just not feeling our best. And so we will literally like go to a trampoline park or like go to a bounce house and just like have a free for all day, but focusing on their needs first instead of like trying to force them to do schoolwork, which I'm not saying like schools will always do that, but schools just have different expectations. And honestly, like having been a teacher, like sometimes it's very difficult to have one or two kids do whatever they want to do when you have other kids in the classroom who need structure, who need, you know, it's just really complicated. So I think flexibility is huge. And just being able to give your child like that individualized attention when it comes to academics. Like a lot of parents are kind of freaked out, like, hey, but like I don't know how to teach them how to read. I don't know how to teach them math in a way that works. And like, we can learn that. Like those are skills that either I can support you with, or you can research and you can figure out. But when you're able to give your kid that like one-on-one instruction and support, I find that they sometimes even make more or quicker progress than they would in like a traditional school setting.
I absolutely agree with that. And that's, and I always say that too. Like I have several friends that are teachers. Like I love what they do in the public school system. Like that's not what I'm about at all. No, but I do realize like we went through several different school districts with my kids before we just realized it wasn't working. And that's the public school system set up to educate the masses or educate like a group of people. And unfortunately, especially for my kids, and that's not necessarily the same for, you know, everyone with an autism diagnosis. Maybe they do learn better in a group setting. But for my specific kids, and I know a lot of other families, that one-on-one education makes a complete difference.
Yeah, it really does.
In the month of June, over on my podcast, we're talking all things homeschooling. Yeah. And one of the things I think is important to let families know and to remind them is we're our children's first educators. We you taught them how to crawl, you taught them how to walk, you taught them probably like their numbers and colors before they get to school. Like we do all of that. And so I think that sometimes we forget that because like, okay, they're 5. I feel like there's like something that goes off in our brain like, oh, I don't know how to educate my child anymore. Yes. I need to send them. Right. And I don't necessarily think that that's the case anymore. We just need to observe our children more. Like they show us so much without even saying anything to us. They show us our special interest and the way that they learn. And so I think that's another great tool that you can provide is just, hey, they're already actually showing you this, you just need to watch out for X, Y, and Z. Yes. And it makes a huge difference. So I just love that. And then something else I just wanted to point out too is if kiddos do have an IEP in school, that's something else we're talking about this week on, like you can make your own IEP at home. I feel like sometimes parents get into that headset too. Like, well, they have all these resources at school. We can provide those resources at home, and Grace is a great tool to provide all those. I know. So how do you help parents, and then even yourself, how do you identify learning style in children?
We hear a lot. We hear like the phrase learning styles tossed around a lot. And like there's definitely, like you mentioned, like observing our kids, seeing what works best for their brains and their bodies to learn. Like there's a lot of merit to that. I kind of flip it on its head a little bit. And when I think about learning styles, especially during homeschooling, I have kind of come up with 3 different categories. And I find that when parents hear this, it really makes a lot of sense to them, and it saves them a lot of money when it comes to curriculums. So the 3 categories, I love a budget, love a budget. The 3 categories that I have are kiddos who can attend to and learn from online instruction. So we have like our online homeschooling curriculums, or even just like games and things on an iPad. Like they're able to sit, they're able to learn from that, and that's awesome. So I call those our like online instruction kiddos. The next area is I call parent-led kids. And this is what a lot of families think about when they think about homeschooling. So maybe you're doing like sensory bins with like your numbers and your letters that you're learning about, and you're able to sit there with your kid and kind of teach them through that. Or for some families, it looks like sitting down and doing like workbooks or like more formal lessons. And that's great. Like if that works for a family, awesome. But then the third category, and these are the families that are usually like really nervous to start homeschooling and feel the most overwhelmed, is what I have like coined the play sensory movement kids. So these are the families who have children who are like, okay, Grace, like homeschooling sounds super cute, but like my kid never sits like ever. Ever. We get a lot of joy from running around the home, like stemming, getting sensory input. Like that's our life and it's beautiful and we love it. But how do I translate that into learning at home?
Right.
And so I do a lot of work and guidance with these families of kind of, I'm not certified in this, but kind of from the perspective of like a DIR floor time, like incorporating lots of play, lots of movement, attending to those sensory needs, and sneakily incorporating academic instruction into that. Because what I find is, let's say you have like a play sensory movement learning style kiddo, and when you homeschool them, you put them on like time for learning or like another online curriculum, and you're like, they won't even sit and look at the computer. It can be so disappointing. And
Yes.
you're just like, oh, I spent money on that.
Want to throw in the towel like right then. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And you're just like, I'm done. Send them back to school.
Mhm.
So I find that once you figure out kind of which one of those categories your child might be in, then you can look up, or I can help guide you to different resources and techniques that will work for those kids. They don't have to fit just in one of those areas. Like I always say, like if your kid's like an online learning kiddo, they can do all 3 of those things. They could do online, they can do work with you, and they can like do a lot of play and movement, and vice versa. But I find that organization really helps me in supporting families and helps them in understanding what's going to work and what's not going to work.
Yeah. And I feel like it also just makes us feel heard, hear about, and even like me, really, before we talked, like I'm like, okay, there's visual, there's tactile, there's auditory, like these are the learning styles. And my son Vincent like definitely fits into those categories. But then I have my kiddo that's swinging on the spinning or the sensory swing, 5 feet behind this tripod. Doesn't really fit into any of those categories.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so even as a parent, I feel like it makes me feel heard and makes me feel like, oh, I can do this. I just have to think differently.
Yes.
Which is something we've been doing since the day they were born. So it's fine.
Yeah.
So I love that. Because I've not actually heard them split up like that before.
Yeah.
And I feel like knowing how your child learns and what they're interested in, that is a game changer in everything, but especially in educating them.
Yeah, totally agree.
If you had to pick 3 different things, different tools, different curriculums, whatever it may be, to help support special needs families specifically when they go to homeschooling, what were those top 3 things?
Yes. Number 1, and my favorite book ever. And if you've never heard of this and you have the mental capacity to get the book, get the book. It's called Comprehensive Literacy for All. And it is a book for professionals, parents, teachers, but it's very parent friendly. It explains the research, the theories, and the practical application of how to teach kids with more complex needs how to read, write, and spell. So if you're at home and you're like, we're trying all these different curriculums, we've been working on our ABCs for like years, I don't know why we're not making progress, this is the book that you want. It's very neurodiversity friendly. It always assumes competence, and just the instructional routines and ideas in this book are just life-changing. So definitely that one.
So I have a kiddo who he definitely knows his letters because we put them in the little box. He picks out the flashcards.
Yes.
But he's non-speaking. So he can't, typically I'd just be like, hey, what letter is this? And then he tell me. But he obviously doesn't do that. So is that a good resource that we, a family like mine, could reach out for?
Yes. It honestly primarily addresses kiddos who are non-speaking or just with more complex language needs, all the way to children and learners who are medically fragile and communicate with eye gaze. So it really encompasses everything and teaches you how to teach them. I love it. It's the best. Kind of going along with that, the second resource that I love and recommend to any family that has an AAC user or they are looking into AAC as a resource. It's called AAC Language Lab. It's $20 a year for a subscription. Speech therapists use it, parents use it, teachers use it. But it is an online database of lesson plans, materials, ideas of how to teach and for ourselves, learn how to use an AAC device, but primarily how to teach our children how to communicate more effectively. It focuses a lot on core vocabulary. So whatever AAC program families are using, those words that are on the main page.
Right.
And it just has fun games, lessons. It's just a really, really great resource. And literally everyone who I've recommended it to, they'll text me or post in my little Facebook group. They're this is the best. Everyone needs to get it. And it's so good. And it's made by one of the authors of that book. So again, really interweaving literacy and communication.
Yeah, because they do go very, very tightly. Wow. My kiddo that does speak level 3 diagnosis, sometimes I forget that communication and literacy go hand in hand, because he's been reading since he was 2. He loves letters, loves numbers, but being able now to comprehend what he's reading and able to tell me that, sometimes I have to remember that I'm you've been reading for years. Why are we not? But it's the communication barrier. So absolutely. I mean, that works for such a wide range of people. I love that. I definitely check them out. I can't wait.
It's so good. So then number 3 kind of encompasses both of those things. And it's a curriculum that actually follows the instructional routines and research of that first book. So it follows Comprehensive Literacy for All. And the curriculum is called Readtopia. They have a younger version called Readtopia Go for preschool through about 2nd grade. And then their Readtopia curriculum is for 3rd grade through adult. It focuses on those instructional routines that help non-speaking or minimally speaking learners learn how to learn their letters and their sounds, read, write, spell. And like you said, most importantly, the goal of all of this is 2 things. 1, to read, but to read with comprehension. Because if we're just reading words, that's not going to get us anywhere. Right. And 2, especially for our learners who are either emergent communicators or beginning communicators, there's only so much on their AAC device. So yes, we can put together all these phrases, but when we teach a child to spell, that opens up millions of other communication opportunities. And it's just so important. I'm so passionate about that we need to be focusing on spelling instruction for our kids.
I've never put that 2 and 2 together.
Right?
That's how Maxwell learned how to communicate with us.
I know. Yeah. I mean, when I first heard that, I was whoa. Yeah. Right. There's thousands of things we can say on our Proloquo or our LAMP, whatever device we're using. But if our child can spell, or at least approximately spell in a way that we could look at it and mostly understand what they're saying, they're going to be able to communicate things to us that their device might limit them to. So, yeah.
There's a book called The Reason I Jump. I don't know if you've read that.
I do. I have.
You do? Awesome. Yeah. Yes. So it was one of the first books I actually read after my kiddos got their diagnosis.
Wow.
And that is just a boy that I don't, can he speak when he writes the book? I don't think so. I think he still is just typing all of this.
Yeah.
But it's a very, it's an elegantly book put together, and it gave me such an insight on my children. And it's exactly that. He learned how to spell. His parents, didn't inhibit him, didn't set any kind of, this is where you're going to stop. They just kept pushing and pushing. And then he wrote a book. Even though
gives me goosebumps.
Had all these barriers. I know. It's one of the things I always think about is there is no limit to what our kids can do.
No.
So
no,
I love that. We'll definitely be adding the spelling goal to Maxwell's IEP now, so thank you for that. So when should families consider getting a coach?
So families kind of already in it, figuring it out, but kind of facing some roadblocks. I honestly, first of all, a lot of people don't know that services like mine exist. So once you hear about it, I always encourage reaching out just as soon as you can, just so you're not struggling. I don't want people to head into that burnout space, but it's so easy to do when you're just hitting a pain point. And then for your kids too, we want to make sure we're giving them the most appropriate instruction we can as quickly as we can. So honestly, anytime a problem comes up, I love working with families wherever they're at. And then for families too who aren't homeschooling yet but are thinking about it, same thing. The earlier the better that you're able to just kind of chat with someone, get some insight. I just find not only does it make things easier, but it just kind of gives you peace and either confirms your decision to homeschool, or it might be hey, maybe this isn't for us, and public school or private school might be best for us right now. So I always say the earlier the better, just so you can get that information.
Right. So you help families start out even from ground zero all the way up, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you're thinking about it at all, then we could reach out to you.
Yeah.
And now it's June, and I know that sounds early, but really now I feel we're starting slowly to get our stuff prepped now, because it just makes the school year go so much better.
It does.
Have everything prepared ahead. And not necessarily that we go by the book all year round, because that definitely does not happen at my house, unfortunately. But I'd like to have a game plan and act like it's going to.
Yeah, so. Right? You have ideas, then we can accommodate.
Exactly. And then something else I just wanted to mention, and is this still available for people? Your course that I heard so much about a couple weeks ago.
And working with families and kind of learning about everyone's different needs. Some people are in it and they just need some help. Some people haven't taken the deep dive yet and they want to know step by step what to do. The last 6 months or so I put together an online class or an online course for families that they can take, and it guides them through every single step of homeschooling their kid with support needs. So all the way from getting started to figuring out what curriculums and materials to use. We have a 2-hour training in it all about regulation, polyvagal theory, kind of learning how our body and our nervous system supports learning. When parents learn about this, they're why have I never heard about this sooner?
Right.
We talk about that. We talk about another big piece is I teach you as a parent how to use evidence-based teaching practices like task analysis, visual supports, modeling, all these things, so that when you're delivering your instruction, you can use whatever materials, whatever curriculum kind of vibes with you and your family, but you can use those things in a way that's going to be most efficient, and it's going to help your child not only learn, but retain that information, which is huge for a lot of families. Also share a lot of strategies and advice stemming from research of how to support engagement and attention, which again circles back to that whole regulation piece. Everything circles back to regulation. Who are we kidding? The format of this, it is a pre-recorded training for families. So as of right now, it's over 7 hours long. So you can either watch it or listen to it while your kid's in therapy or when you're doing dishes late at night. In addition to the trainings and lessons that you can listen to, I have hundreds, probably at this point, thousands of pages of downloads. So ebooks, templates, visuals you can print off and use at home. A lot of planning and reflection for you. So after you listen to a lesson, we have a reflection piece at the end where I ask you questions and guide you through, okay, you learn this, take what you know now and apply it to your family. Let's make this doable, because I wanted people to be able to apply it. So we have all of that. And then there's also a community aspect to it. So in addition to the course, we have an exclusive community group. So kind of think of a fancy Facebook group with some fun features where parents can connect, ask questions, and I'm there to support them as well. And we also do monthly video calls within there, so parents can hop on and hey, we're struggling with this, or they just want to chat with other parents. That's a piece of it too. So it's really been neat. We have I think we just had our 20th family enroll in it, which was super exciting. So I'm just really loving seeing how it's supporting family in an organized way. And then also in addition to this, this is a great way to just kind of get that foundation of how this works. And then as families have questions, they can either post in that community or they can set up a consult with me in addition to that. And when you join, it's lifetime access. So you join now, I'm going to be adding and updating things. In the next couple of months, I'm going to be adding a module all about literacy. So people who join will already have access to that. So it's just a really neat little project I've been working on to support families who are homeschooling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love I think that one of the biggest things is like teaching them how to teach their kids.
Yes.
Because that's, I know even like from a therapy standpoint, my favorite therapists are ones who sat down and taught me, because we're with our kids 24/7.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can teach them. They get therapy 24/7. They're actually, that's my favorite thing about homeschooling, is they're actually learning 24/7 now. I just like to hide it in ways that they don't know that they're learning. So I love that you take the time to sit down and teach us those principles, because that's something that's going to benefit us with schooling. But I mean, kids learn all the time. It's not just in the academics and the books.
Yes.
So that's absolutely fantastic. And then the community is, I mean, and I know everyone can relate to this, just as sometimes how isolating it can feel. And just having that, even if it is virtual, sometimes getting some of the best people I've met now are virtual, because they just get it and you just click automatically. So that's fantastic, all those resources. And I just, a side note for families who have never done a course, I've done a couple, and I was always a little anxious about doing courses, I feel like, before. But they're very laid back. Like I do exactly that, like put them in my ear while I'm cleaning the house or doing the dishes. Like it's not, you can just kind of do it at your own pace. So that's awesome. I'm so glad that you provide that for families. So we'll definitely include that at the end of this too. Grace, do you just have anything else that you would like to share with anyone that's thinking about homeschooling, and especially homeschooling support needs or special needs children?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would leave families who are listening to this with is, especially if you have not started homeschooling yet, you're still really thinking about it. I get a lot of anxious families who reach out to me and are just like, is this even right for us? Like, how do I know that, I don't want to like mess things up. I don't want to make life hard. And I kind of boil it down to these three things. So wherever your child is right now in school, whether they're at home with you or in a school, are they safe? Are they happy? And are they learning? And if those three things are happening where they are, it might be fine that they stay there. Like, you don't need to do this immediately. But if you ask yourself those questions and you kind of have some red flags pop up, and you can financially and time-wise like make this commitment even for the next couple months, I say just rip that Band-Aid off and do it. Like, you don't have to know what you're doing from the start, especially now. Like, if you're listening to this in the summer, you have plenty of time to plan. Homeschooling doesn't always have to start like when public school starts. It's just taking that time to reflect. Are they happy? Are they learning? Are they safe? Taking things from there and just taking things day by day. It's totally doable.
And that's a good note to think about if you, like, let's say you've already pulled them out and you are homeschooling and you're doubting your abilities, which happens probably daily, let's be real, to just reflect on just those three basic questions and just remember, we're doing this for a reason. It's fine. We are thriving. Yeah. Just my last question, Grace, is if someone wants to like reach out to you, set up that one-on-one coaching, or just find you on social even, or your course, where would they go to find all that?
The best place to find me is two places. So I'm primarily on TikTok, and the handle is at Homeschooling for All. I'm also on Instagram with that same handle. If you want to get in touch with me or like book a consult with me, the best way to do that is to either go to one of those, go to link in my bio and I'll link you there. I also have a Facebook group where parents can have access. I share like a lot of free like PDFs and like links to things on there. Parents also ask questions in there, so that's a great place to be. And the name of that Facebook group is Special Needs Homeschooling, Homeschooling for All. We have, I think, close to 400 families in there now, so I'd love to welcome some more in too.
And that's another episode of Homeschooling in the month of June on Supporting Autism Mama. If you've liked anything of this episode, please make sure to give us a thumbs up. If you really like this content and have shared it with anyone, please consider subscribing to our channel so we can continue to bring you the best resources to help guide you and your family. Open gates for special needs families. Stay strong out there.